course I want to have sex, but like, where is the buildup, right? And the seduction is that buildup. Seduction is the foreplay. The foreplay is the seduction. It is the piece where we are being mindful and taking our time to really appeal to our lover.
Welcome to Honey Do Me, a podcast that goes into the bedroom and beyond, hosted by Emma Norman
and Cass Anderson. Here at Honey Do Me, we don't have all the answers, so we chat with experts, educators, and badass changemakers to get them.
We are here to remind our listeners and ourselves that what we're going through is normal, that we are worthy of love and pleasure,
and that we are all in this together. So tell us, honey, how do you do you?
Sing 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it.
Welcome.
You're so spooky. You got a lot of voices
I have
that
a vibe.
you use. Yeah.
I have a lot of faces I can make too.
You can wink really well. I don't want to see that face. That's like a... Okay, now you're doing weird animals. You don't want to see these faces.
The first one was a tapeworm, and the second one was a rat.
I'm going to say
Those are my two faces.
Okay. Well, I was mainly talking about the cute ones, like when you wink in the middle of a joke and it's funny.
Oh, thanks. I used to not be able to wink, so that's cool. I also used to not be able to snap.
But look at her now.
Look at her now. She's thriving.
It's a success story. She can snap. Oh, I'm so proud of you.
They're going to be so jealous of me at my 10-year reunion.
Mine are louder. Your Cass can snap now.
Wink.
And wink. Your mouth has to be open, though, when you do it.
Yes, it does. That is a non-negotiable for me. So
it's okay. I can, kind of wink. I've always been a good snapper, though. I can shake my eyes. Are we talking about secret talents?
Ugh. Show me.
I have to be really close to you. That's why. The
So
target
is it
has
that
to be
special?
right here. It is special. I would like to know anyone else that can do it
Speaking of
besides
seduction,
my sister.
Emma's going to wiggle her eyes at you. And if that doesn't seduce you, honey,
It will hypnotize
What
you.
will?
What will? But I do have other techniques of seduction, but I won't tell them now.
Why spoil the surprise?
Spoil it. That's only for a select few.
So yeah, today we are talking about seduction and foreplay, Emma's true talents, if you haven't already
Wiggly
gathered
eyes.
that.
Snappy hands.
And
Sorry.
contrary to popular belief, there are experts out there greater than us.
Yeah. I mean, it is flooring, but we found them.
But we found them, and we brought on the truly incredible Marla Renee Stewart, who does just a few things. She is a sexologist, a coach, an educator, a pleasure activist, a sexual strategist. She has been studying human sexuality for over 20 years. She started a sex education company called Velvet Lips. She specializes in seduction, communication, and sex skills. And as if that wasn't enough, she also runs a conference called Sex Down South in Atlanta, where they have sexuality workshops that cater to people who want to learn more about themselves. And they prioritize folks of color, queer, trans, non-binary folks, sex workers, and folks with disabilities.
So just basically all the work of a very, very, very good human.
A very good human who is also very cool and good at sex.
Good at sex. So why did you want to talk about foreplay and seduction?
Because I'm not good at it. I like foreplay, as any God-loving human does. I don't know.
Warm-blooded
as
human
any
does.
God-loving American does. I feel like I've really gotten into a routine with my partner, and it's feeling a little stale. I'm feeling like I need a little more spice, feeling like I need a little zhuzh in that department.
Mm-hmm.
And he also doesn't really know what to do. So we're just looking for suggestions. So if you have any, slide into our DMs.
From literally anyone. You don't have to be an expert.
No. Just like your best and worst, and we'll try both.
Yeah, exactly. I was kind of in the same boat. I feel like I forgot about seduction in foreplay. You know?
Oh, yeah, I've never seduced anyone. I would say that. I was talking about specifically foreplay. I have never in my life seduced a soul. Never. Maybe my plate of food that I'm excited to eat, but that is about it. Oh, I get so excited. Not a salad. No, I don't seduce a salad. No, a salad goes straight down the gullet.
Okay.
A nice cookie?
Oh my God. Great. I can't look at you because I just keep laughing when you do stuff.
Sorry.
Fucking hilarious. But yeah, I forgot about it. And I fucking love to be, seduced or drawn in or like how to switch up foreplay. Because like you said, it could get kind of routine, but then you're also like, well, then what the fuck else is there?
What do you do? I'm like, there are only 4 things that we can do. So what do we do outside of those things?
And
because my partner has already said no to one of them. So
also I really don't know what seduction is, to be honest with you. Like, what does it mean when I think of seduction? I think of the movies when they like draw someone backwards with like a wave of the finger. Like, is that seduction?
A wave of the finger, which isn't that also how you get a G-spot orgasm? A come
Seduction.
hither motion?
You know what I mean?
You know what I mean?
I am the expert.
Yeah.
That's literally all I think about is like, come here, hubba hubba. And so I don't know what seduction is, which is also why I needed an expert.
Yeah. So this was needed.
And I hope you take something away.
I hope this helps you in the way that it helped us.
Yeah.
We can't wait to talk about our seduction styles, and
We'll see you on the other side.
as always. One thing that stuck out to me, sexual strategist. I love that. Can you tell me more?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's so funny because I was like, I'm going to do this. Actually, I'm going to be launching for people to become a certified sexual strategist next year, actually. So I'm working on that. And I'm basically what it is I developed a strategy for helping people that is not just, it's not sex therapy in the sense of I'm going to let you, talk to me and talk to me about your feelings and everything else. But I talk about it as actually an integrative strategy. So sex therapists are very limited in what they can and can't do and how they engage with their clients. And so I think it's particular for me, energetically when I'm feeling things or things that I want to say, it's not necessarily to please the client, but to ensure that they are getting all the help that they need. So I use an integrative strategy, and it's basically a combination of sex therapy, somatic therapy, and comprehensive sex ed. And so we use the sex therapy piece of making connections, talking through sexual functions, talking through sexual feelings, talking through intimacy, with individuals and folks in relationships. And it's very much that talk process is quite similar to sex therapists. And there's even like communication techniques that I have used or that I've borrowed from sex therapists that I use in my work that works to really help my clients. And so I integrate that with somatic therapy, which is the use of breath work, even erotic breath work, vocal work, movement, touch, massage, like the use of those things that might be particular to someone who might have some touch-based or affection-based or intimacy as far as physical issues. So being able to use those in combination as well and helping people with that, their communication style, whether it's verbal, nonverbal, as well as thinking about like the seduction process. And then, of course, sex skills. I have to teach people, like what's the use of being a person who's trying to help someone who's like, hey, here's your G-spot. Try to find it. It's right over here. Do you feel it?
Exactly.
So rather than doing that, I can actually go in, and I've had the opportunity to do this with people, whether they have like, well, I don't really know what one feels like. So I've had people, find my G-spot. I've felt other people's G-spots. So it's really the ability to be able to go in and say like, hey, I'm able to go to touch my clients or have my clients touch me in a way that's going to help them and not be distant, right? Which, sex therapy is like, don't touch, don't come near, don't do any of that.
That is so cool. Talk about hands-on learning.
I know you said go in, and I mean, you literally go in.
Yeah.
But using hands-on learning, that's incredible because I feel like it's hard to find places you can go if you're really looking for someone to get literally like down and dirty with you to understand about my body, how to understand someone else's body, how to really engage in, sexual pleasure. So a sex strategist is a whole other avenue that we can start like looking into to get that help. And I think that's fantastic. That's so exciting.
Yeah. And so it's a combination of those two things as well as the comprehensive sex ed piece, right? So I actually started with young people, so making sure they're getting the age appropriate knowledge. So it includes, giving young people or giving adults, knowledge around sex and sexuality, reflections on what a healthy attitude looks like, develop their personal awareness, their sex skills, and really helping them to recognize their life and sexual values so that they can make healthy and appropriate choices. And I would also argue to say responsible sexual choices in their lives.
Yeah. And that's such important work to start, especially young, but just in general for the average adult.
We want to get into so much stuff. Let's start out with some seduction. We would love to know more. I guess what I'm wondering when I hear the word seduction, like what really is it? Is that another word for a sexier word for initiating sex? Is it different from initiating sex? Can it be the same? Yeah. You go.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's interesting, right? I really got inspired from reading Robert Greene's book, The Art of Seduction. And what I really saw was actually there was a really great connection between, seduction and our learning styles and how one really taps into what kind of seducer they are and what are the things that they need in order to be influential, right? And so I would say seduction is, when I think of seduction, I think of I call them seduction learning styles, right? So it's how people get seduced. So whether you are visual or tactile or combination of visual tactile, maybe you're auditory, whatever it is, really is sometimes one or more primary ways that you can be in tune to a lover or potential lover that will help you move in a way that helps you get more connected to them. For instance, if you are a visual person, and sometimes the reason why I can tell people are visual is because visual people love shiny things, right? So these are the people who, they're like me. They like have lots of jewelry in their face or shiny things around on their, necklaces or bracelets or whatever. They're visual. And a lot of times you can tell somebody who's visual is by making eye contact with them. So making eye contact with them, I say dressing up or, dressing down, dress taking off stuff, striptease, really being able to give them a story where they can visualize. Like these are my daydreamers, right? So they're like visualizing things. So if you want to appeal to them, that means you got to give them a story to appeal to, a story that can help them make connections and actually see the story going on in their head. These are my people who, if you want to get someone who's visual's attention, that means you need to be the opposite of the room, right? It means if the room is busy, right, that you are moving slowly or you are staying still, right? If the room is sitting, that means you are entering in late, right? Or so that people turn to see you. So it's these things are these elements of movement and vision and visualization that help with the seduction process or help with connecting by giving someone something that they actually need to connect with you. Right. And so same thing with auditory and tactile. There's different tactics as we explain in our Jess and I's book, The Ultimate Guide to Seduction and Foreplay. We frame that out, sort of elevated erotic feelings and your core erotic feelings that help frame the book theoretically, but then it's also practical. So it's not just this visual people need this. I suppose they need it, but it's actually this works. Like this is a practice you can actually do. It's not just I'm saying something just to say it. Affection is huge, and affection, physical affection is one of the primary ways that a lot of people need and hunger for, especially right now, like in COVID times, right? Like I'm sad I can't hug strangers anymore, you know, like, so it's kind of one of those things where you're like, like just those little things are going to improve your relationship. And how many of those little things can you do a day?
Right.
And, you know, and it matters.
Mm-hmm. So first of all, when you were explaining the visual seduction, I was like, I think that's mine. That all sounded really good. And I like that you said it kind of comes from like our learning style. So maybe I'm definitely like a visual learner because I was really bad at school. So if they didn't have a diagram on the whiteboard, I didn't know what I was learning. But what are some other ways we can kind of like tap into what we know are our seduction styles, or maybe what our partner's seduction styles are? Are there more ways to know kind of what we like? And if trial and error goes really bad,
like how do you figure it out? How do you figure out which style is yours, which style is your partner's? What if you're not good at your partner's style? What if they're not good at your style?
Sounds like a train wreck, and it's scary.
There's room for all of that, actually. What's really great about the seduction learning styles is that there's so many things that you can do to cater to that, right? So for instance, for auditory, right? If someone is auditory, a lot of times, what I love about auditory people is they go, oh my gosh, I love a great conversation, right? And I think it's so hilarious to me because I've been doing this work for so long, and I'm like, you love it when someone pays attention to you while you are talking.
Mm-hmm.
Really, you love to hear your own voice is what it is.
Cass just pointed to herself at that point.
So it's like being an active listener. It's such like a connecting experience. Like, oh, you are really listening to me. You are really talking to me. So that's what people usually say. Those are my auditory people. And for auditory people, you know, they love moans, breathy tones, talking to them where you let them hang on every word, right? Mm-hmm. Like in the book, I list out a bunch of these things. So you can really go in and see like, oh, hey, yeah, this, you know, I'm actually a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I have a quiz too that I can offer you and your listeners that I just call, it's a hack. It's really good just because like, hey, here's a quick hack. If you don't want to like do all these things, here, have them take this quiz. It'll give it to you in, you know, 5 minutes.
That would be amazing.
Hell yeah. Yes.
I want to know. I think I know what mine is, but I want
other people to know too.
Exactly. I want my partner to know.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then like with tactile people, these are my people who they have to touch everything, right? It's like you take them to a store, they're touching everything on the shelf, every single clothing item. They are touching all the things. They want to know all the things. So in order to seduce them, what do you think you need to do, right? You need to use their hands. You need to wear different kinds of fabrics. We're so used to wearing like cotton every day. Like what are the different kinds of fabrics that you could use that it would feel good to their touch?
Bring out the latex.
Yeah. So, you know, dancing with them. Tactile people tend to be my athletes, right? Like my sporting people. People who like to move, dance, you know, all of those things.
This is so fun. It's so many things. And it's so many things that I wouldn't think, like if you were to say like visual or auditory, I'm like, okay, so I wear something sexy or I say something sexy. But these are so many different layers to those types of seduction styles that'll bring in so many different like levels to your... to your experience, which I think is just like, I'm getting excited like talking about it. And it's new, which I think is, I mean, novelty is one of the biggest things that you need, especially for us in like long-term relationships. So bringing novelty to things that you think you already like know all about is huge.
Well, because maybe like what I'm thinking is I'm sure there are people out there, like I know I've been in situations where I'm like, I'm not turned on, this isn't turning me on, there just must be something wrong, or I'm just not interested, or whatever it is, or this just isn't.
Right.
But I feel like that's because nobody's tried all of these things. You know what I mean? Like maybe they weren't doing what I was into. Yeah. And it's like knowing that there is more to foreplay. There's more to seduction than just, hey, you want to have sex? Yeah. Right?
Yeah. I mean, and there's also and something like that, what stops us, like our turnoffs or whatever. And Dr. Emily Nagoski talks about it in her book, Come As You Are. Like we have these brakes and we have these accelerators, like the things that are turn-ons and our turn-offs. And a lot of the times our turn-offs are they're stressors. Right? Like, do things have to be perfect, you know, or do you have to, what are the circumstances that make you turned all the way on? But a lot of times it does have to do with what is stressing us out in this moment. Like, why aren't you turned on? Are you, like, if you're a visual person, is there like stuff everywhere? Someone's trying to turn me on and I can't concentrate because I'm thinking about how this paper is going to fall off this desk at any moment, right? Like, you know, thinking about like, you know, all of these different aspects are going to be things that slow us down or things that speed us up. So I think it's very helpful to think about that in the process as well.
So it's nice to know that that's kind of like not just me having my mind like wander and being kind of like quote unquote wrong in the sexual experience. Like it's just my mind being a visual person and not being able to fully sink into the moment. Like I'm just a visual seduction person, maybe.
Absolutely. Yes.
I have one clarifying question. I mean, I have a million, but I have one I'm going to ask. So what really is the goal of seduction? Like, is the goal always sex? Is it like a way of life? Because when you were talking about, you know, you walk into a room when everybody else is already sitting down, like it almost sounds like a lifestyle.
It has been my lifestyle my whole life. No. You know, seduction is it's a way for you to get what you want by giving what somebody else also wants, right? So it's a win-win situation, in my opinion, and it's not predatory. It's not. It's really a simple way or a different kind of way of connecting that feels good to both people. And so it's a way of influencing people, but in a way that's positive, positive for you and positive for them. Like I said, for me, it has been a way of life. Somebody said, thinking about like flirtation, right? Like, what is flirting? Is flirting, you know, the same as, you know, seduction? And seduction is goal oriented, right? Seduction is about, connecting and, you know, having a mutual beneficial relationship, regardless of what the relationship is. Whereas flirtation is just like seduction without the goal, for fun.
Right. For fun is the key word, because I like to think that I have a flirty personality. And I've been with different people where they say like, oh, flirting is cheating or whatever. But I feel like flirting is exactly what you said, which is just like fun without a goal. It's just like,
you're not trying to get your biscuits. You're just trying to hang out.
Mama's not trying to get her biscuits. She's just trying to chat.
Yes.
I love that. And can you give us some kind of fun ways to start like initiating sex with seduction? Like what are some good starter tips?
Because me, for example, in my relationship, we tend to just say, you want to have sex?
Yeah.
And it's getting really boring. If I'm going to be honest. It's, yeah.
A little bit boring.
Yeah. So I always say, like, if you're planning for sex on Saturday, what is the thing that you're going to do on Monday? Like, what is the sex seed that you are going to plant and water throughout the week so that you can have an amazing time on that Saturday, right? And so really depending on the person's seduction learning style is how you feed into whatever, you know, the date is. So maybe if they are into, you know, I want some quality time and I just don't want it to be a Netflix chill, you want to have sex. I want it to be, you know, maybe I, you know, buy the candles, or maybe I buy them a new outfit if I'm visual, or maybe, I'm like, I want to read erotica with you, or maybe it's sexting them. Maybe it's learning some new dirty talk phrases, maybe it's, there's a lot of different things that you can do to appeal to one another. But the fact is you have to make the effort, right? It's not like, it's funny because, when it gets to that place of like, yeah, you want to have sex, it's sort of like, of course I want to have sex, but like, where is the buildup, right? And the seduction is that buildup. Seduction is the foreplay. The foreplay is the seduction. It is the piece where we are being mindful and taking our time to really appeal to our lover in the way that really feels good to them, so that, you don't have to say you want to have sex, because you're going to know.
I mean, I think that's fantastic to think about it as like a whole thing you prepare for, because I think it can be a little overwhelming if you're thinking about like, oh, what can I do in the next 5 minutes before sex to make this person feel seduced? But like, you can plan for sex and make it sexy by like just taking into consideration, especially for me, like I love when I feel like someone took like my personal like sexual interest into consideration. So planning a week in advance with thinking about like what would make that day super sexy, and then it can still feel spontaneous without feeling planned, even though you planned it, or prepared is maybe a better word.
Yeah, I think it's all about planning the sex scene. I think it's all about the long game, like maybe it's a short game, but even if it's like, I want to have sex tonight, what am I doing in the morning? What am I doing in the afternoon? What are the ways that it's happening?
Right. Exactly. I feel like there's this big question and often a joke about like, how long should foreplay be and how much foreplay does anyone need? But I love the idea of like, I need a fucking week.
Yeah. I need a fucking week. Which leads perfectly into what we want to get into next, which is foreplay. So can you talk a little bit about the difference of like seduction and then foreplay? So what exactly is foreplay?
Foreplay is seduction. It's one of the things that you're just doing before sex, right? And so, or we actually kind of talk about it as foreplay is actual sex, right? So with a lot of folks who, we're in a very cisgender heteronormative world. Yeah. And a lot of times, I think for me, it's been very advantageous to be queer and doing this work, because when, a lot of my clients are straight, and like, they're like, well, I'm like, okay, so what do you do for foreplay? And they're like, oh, we do oral sex. And I'm like, that's sex. It has sex in the title. So it's not foreplay. So what are you doing for foreplay? And so that helps them to really shape and understand that like foreplay, what you might have been considering foreplay before is actually sex. And foreplay may look in like all sorts of different things. It might look like outer course. It might look like, just rubbing, touching, massaging. It might look like a makeout session in the middle of the day. It might look like, there's lots of different ways that you can implement foreplay, and it doesn't have to be continuous. It doesn't have to lead to sex, right? So we can just have some foreplay and then just like leave it hot and steamy and then come back to it. Like, sometimes it's like, oh, I got to get some work done, but let's make out for 5 minutes and then like, okay, I got to get back to my work. But I'm going to think about that making out, I'm going to come back to it. Because, it was a real turn on for me.
Oh my God.
Yes. So it's a way of like holding that sexual energy that I think is, can be really advantageous for people. But yeah, foreplay is sex. I think it's all intertwined. And I think, we need to start looking at it as such.
Cass and I are having these like revelations as you're talking, because you're saying exactly how I feel. It's like, I want to just like make out enough to feel like super sexy or whatever, and like you can just leave it there. That's totally fine. You can go home. You can leave after that, or just like how what you're saying that, like oral sex or whatever, that is sex. So sometimes foreplay for me could feel a little bit like teasing and like taunting, like sex right before you. So it's hard to explain to someone that isn't as enlightened as we all are. But that foreplay can be so much more.
Definitely. It absolutely. It can be so much more. And I think sometimes if we limit ourselves and we don't open our minds to what the possibilities could be, we're limiting our sexual selves, we're limiting our sexual growth and how we evolve, and we are limiting what we can do sexually too.
So you mentioned outer course. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. Outer course is, I always say, like, not I always say, but like, one of the things that like some people get caught up on, and in particular, I'm thinking about like cisgender women who are like, well, my vagina is out of commission because, I don't know, we didn't use lube and I don't want to have sex because, that would require penetration. But that doesn't necessarily have to be the case, right? Like, you can rub your genitals up against someone's body or different body parts that can get you off and help you to have an orgasm. I'm very orgasm oriented, by the way. And so like the way that, to get an orgasm, if it means, rubbing up on my thigh, or it means that, you are rubbing yourself against my, my butt cheeks or whatever, like that is the way to go. And you can still get off and still have a good time without having oral, anal, or vaginal sex.
I love that. And I think I'm actually a really big fan of outer course. I just haven't had the words for it. And I've actually felt super awkward talking about it with partners. I'm not sure why in particular, like that has been such a hurdle for me to be like, I like this. I guess because the only word I had for it was dry humping. And I don't love that word. It just makes me feel icky.
Well, I think a lot of times when people say, oh yeah, I love, because I always say, oh, these are my humping people. These are my humpers, my grinders, like those are my people. But you have to like, we tend to put it in an immature context. We tend to be like, oh, that's what you did in high school, or that's what you did, or whatever. But the fact is, we had a good time.
Yeah, it was fun then. It'd be fun now.
It's really hot back then. Oh my god!
Exactly. Those are fun times. Yeah. So outer course can be definitely fun, and I think the way that I frame it, I think for adults now is just like, hey, maybe somebody's genitals are out of commission. What are the things that you can do with your genitals that don't require you to interact with their genitals, right?
Yeah.
So.
And I love that mindset. I think that's fantastic. We should have all the options in the world. Nothing should have to lead to something if you don't, whatever. Like, we should just have all the options. I love that. And then touching back, because I've had a lot of controversy asking people about what technically the bases mean. So do you have any like standard definition of what all four of like the bases mean when people say like, oh, I got to first base or something? Do you have any of those?
I'm probably the worst person to talk about with that. I think let's see, thinking back, if I were to think back to high school and I'm thinking like, okay, first base, I think was kissing. And then I think second base was like touching the chest or, breasts or getting naked or making out more. And I think third base was like touching the genitals. And I guess home was sex. So I guess that would be oral or vaginal sex. I didn't have anal sex at that time. But.
That's fair. That was Cass's thing.
Yeah.
My first was like making out. Second was all hands things like hand jobs, fingering. Third was mouth stuff, and home was sex for me. But I've had a lot of controversy with people saying that the bases are
everybody
different.
seems to say different things.
I know.
I think my partner was joking, but his second base was anal. I'm not sure if that was. Let's hope not. I'm like, that feels fast. He's like kissing anal. Like, whoa.
Yeah, like I don't even think I go by bases anymore. I'm just like, are we doing home or not? Like, that's it.
Are we running this
If you're
home
not
or
hitting it
not?
out of the park, I'm not
Right.
interested.
That's so funny. Well, just ask Jurgen if he wants to go to second base with you, and then just like stick something up his butt and just do anal with
You said.
You said this is second. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic.
One thing I've noticed is that my partner, who I've managed to talk a lot about, we tend to get stuck in like a foreplay routine of like, first we're going to do this, then we do this, and then we have sex. And it feels very
routine.
like at first it was fun. The
Yeah.
first 3 times. And then, it's just gotten like, okay, now in 30 seconds, I know he's going to go do this. And it's like, ugh. Do you have recommendations for, not ugh, sorry, Jurgen, I didn't mean it that way.
Yeah.
More like boredom.
Right.
Sorry, I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
Do you have recommendations for how to like break out of that routine, or recommendations for things to spice it up?
Absolutely. It goes back to the seduction learning styles, right? So what you're experiencing is super common. A lot of people complain that they're bored or that they do the same things over and over again. A lot of times I tell people, hey, I have a erotic activity sheet. And so I can give that link to your listeners as well. It's sort of an erotic activity bucket list. And I say, hey, here's a bunch of different things that you can try to do and implement into your sex life and do them together. And that seems to help people get a little goal oriented and not just settle into the same old routine and doing the same old thing over and over and over again. It helps them to be creative and think outside the box. So sometimes I think we just need a little inspiration. We just need a little, motivation or some ideas where we can say like, oh, hey, we can implement this thing. Like, have we, let's think about recording ourselves. Like, what do you think about that?
Ooh.
Like, let's see what we look like, and then maybe it's different. Maybe you do your regular old routine, but you record it. And and then, maybe he's like, oh, that is boring. And you're like, my goodness, see, we need to change it up. So let's look at something else on this list, right? So I think all of those things can be helpful, but honestly, it's really about just trying to tap into your creativity and, maybe you are, maybe you want to get into something new like kink or BDSM or, you want to learn about some spanking, it's sort of like be sexually curious, I think is one of the best things that you could do for your relationship, in order for it to, not be stuck in the same old.
Right.
I love that. I think for me, a huge issue, a huge hurdle is literally just thinking of stuff to do. Because I'm like, I know I'm not super loving what we're doing now, but I have zero idea of what to do. So I'm like, just figure it out.
Totally.
And you're doing it wrong. So,
which is great
for
your great communication.
Bad.
It's amazing. It's working so well. Yeah.
Do you have any like unexpected or like spontaneous things for foreplay that people should be trying that like you've figured out but the world should know about?
It's hard for me to think about spontaneity. I think because my life is really structured. And so I always say like for somebody who craves spontaneity, their partner needs to just plan what their spontaneity looks like.
Yeah.
Because usually there's one partner that's like, I'm spontaneous. And the other one's like, I could be not spontaneous. I'm okay with not being spontaneous. And so I feel like it's kind of like on the not spontaneous partner to kind of like plan and do something different and unique to make their partner feel like it's spontaneous. Because we have to understand our desires are very different, and some of us do have spontaneous desire and some of us have responsive desire. And so we have to make that happen. Sometimes that chemistry just doesn't, just pop up out of thin air. And I think that's important it's important to give ourselves some grace to know that, it's not, it might not pop up out of anywhere. But in the case of trying to implement spontaneity, I suggest like having like a fun secret phrase, you know, for you two that means something, right? So you say like, hey, when I say this, that means we're going to do a quickie in the closet for whatever, 2 minutes. And
I like that.
yeah, so that means you say the phrase, you both know what it means, and you do that thing. And I think that can help cure that can help with some of the spontaneity of like, hey, I'm ready. And if the spontaneous person is always ready, then, you know, all you have to do is like say that phrase and, you know, get going.
Boom.
Well, I like that because that's cool. Because then you don't have to like be like try to lure without saying outwardly like I want to have sex. You could just be like the plants need watering. That's true too. Ew, I don't like mine.
I had a partner that like one of our phrases was like, I think I said like, did you have your medicine yet? Ooh. Or like there's a phrase like, did you check the mail? Or, you know, it was something very ordinary that like if we were in public or if we were, you know, out or there was family or somebody that they, you know, would know who, you know, what I was talking about.
Oh, I love that
so much. It's a secret code word.
Don't listen, Mom, but I love that you can have a code word in front of your family. I think that's super hot.
The last question I have is about rejection, because I think in all of this, like I've struggled with confidence. Asking for sex can be hard for me because I struggle with confidence and I'm worried about like, you know, being rejected. I think we all are worried about being rejected on some level. So do you have anything to say about like how to kind of work through that rejection? Because obviously we all want to be having consensual sex. Yeah. So that's of the utmost importance. But I want to deal with like those sorts of feelings that come from being rejected.
Yeah. So when it comes to rejection, I definitely subscribe to Don Miguel Ruiz's The 4 Agreements. Have you read that book?
It's on my bookshelf. If I'm being honest, I haven't read it, but I would love to get inspired to read it.
I mean, the premise is just those 4 agreements, right? And so when I think about rejection, it's sort of like framing all of these things rooted in the 4 agreements. So be impeccable with your word, meaning that the way that you come at somebody, whether you are being rejected or rejecting, is going to influence how they see you. So how you reject them is going to matter. And it's kind of like karmic. You know, I asked you to dance and, you know, you say, hell no, I don't want to dance with you. You know, that's like gross and ugly. Yeah. Whereas, you know, you can easily say, you know, I'm not really interested in dancing at the moment. You know, and it comes at you softer, right? And so be impeccable with your word is the first one. Don't take anything personally. But if we were to be more mindful and say like, hey, maybe that person is going through something. Maybe, you know, it's not about me. Maybe they just don't want to do this thing. Maybe they're not into dancing. I don't know. Like trying just not to take it personally or not taking anything personally is really, really going to be helpful for your own success because you're being mindful about them. Maybe it's about them. Maybe it's not necessarily about you. Now, it could be about you, but you don't have to take it in like it is about you. You know what I mean? So you can just say like, hey, maybe there's something else that's on their mind. Another one of the 4 agreements is like, don't make assumptions. So don't make assumptions. Don't assume that, you know, someone is going to want to dance with you. And then again, thinking about, always do your best, right? So like I said, like, even if you're rejecting someone, not coming at them in any type of way. And if you are being rejected, like being graceful and tactful about it. But yeah, so when I think about rejection, I think about those things and helping people to frame like, you know, yes, we all don't want to be rejected, but if we, you know, don't take it personally, be mindful, be impeccable with our word, do the best that we can with what we got, then I think we can be better people in the long run.
I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, because rejection can really be so multi-layered. I think my especially initial reaction, I know Cass, you too, where we take it straight to the heart. And but really, if I think about all the different times that I've had to say no to something, it has so many different levels than just like, I'm not into you, maybe, you know? So I think even just having more conversations and reiterating all the different reasons why rejection can happen is so important, especially around sex. So I love, those are great 4 tips. And now I'll have to read that book that's on your shelf as well, which is fantastic. Okay, so we have gotten to the partner episode where we like to do homework for honeys, where we like to talk about one actionable step that we can all take to start incorporating what we talked about today. So, Marla, would you do the honor of assigning all of us some homework for this week?
Yes. So the homework for this week is to pay attention to, you know what, actually, we kind of talked about this. Do something different that you have never done before in your sex life. So whether that is sending a dirty text or a picture, or whether that is implementing a new toy, or maybe learning a new sexual move, like try to do something different that you would normally not do in your sex life.
Mm-hmm. So important to spice it up. I love it.
I love it. I need to spice it up. That's one of my New Year's intentions. So, yes. Thank you for that homework.
Perfect homework.
And last thing before we go, can you tell our listeners where they can continue connecting with you? Because they're going to want to. Because you're
absolutely
so cool.
Yes. You can find me at my website at velvetlipssexed.com. You can find me on social media, Velvet Lips Sex Ed, no E in the sex, and or you can go to one Marla Stewart, and you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I have a TikTok account, but I have not really done anything with it. But it's there. But yeah, you can feel free to reach out to me on my website, at velvetlipssexed.com.
Perfect. And we'll have all of that in the show notes, along with the links to all of the stuff that we talked about.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Okay, we have arrived at the end. Thank you so much to Marla for being on the episode today and going through all the ins and outs of what foreplay, seduction, all the things we literally don't know anything about.
Yeah.
And thank you to our listeners for sticking with us.
Yeah, and if you want to seduce us a bit, give us a little bit of foreplay, you can head over to Apple Podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe to Honey Do Me. We appreciate it so much. We love you so much, and it shows us that you love us, and who doesn't want a reciprocating relationship?
That's all you want.
You give some, you get some.
Yeah, exactly.
Feels fair.
Anything else we want to ask them?
No, just peace, love, light. We'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.
There we go. We're getting good.